here to play this game from 1991. It's called Darkurthe Legends, and it is so obscure that you won't even find people referencing it as obscure. It's one of the games that I have called Fantasy Heartbreakers, which is a non-derogatory term. It is specifically about people who played their role-playing games, developed them, published them, and were completely destroyed by the nature of role-playing publishing. They may have been a little bit naive in terms of the context of fantasy that they were using, or they might not. It depends on the game. These guys did something kind of interesting. Many of these games will have dragon people and cat people and four-armed dwarves and things that make them, different and exotic. This is a little different. This one works right off of the very basic fantasy races from fantasy role-playing. I think these guys were in on it from early. And they went their own way with it. It's like they had read Tolkien too, and they said, well, we don't have to do what these guys do with that. I have read Tolkien, I have read Moorcock, and we are going to do our thing. So it's 1991, but it is very 90s in its way. It loves the horror and the excess. They may or may not have read Warhammer, but they had read whatever the authors of Warhammer had read. So in many ways, it's quite straightforward. And we will begin by looking at, you see, I have to pull out all this stuff that I brought.
I'm so disappointed if I can't play like a four-armed dwarves.
No four-armed dwarfs this time. Let me tell you about the one with the elf-ish race has, what is it? No nose, but a magic rune where their nose is. I don't know either. But that's what that's, and their dwarf characters have like these tails. They're kind of reptile-like. See what I mean? There's a lot of them are like that. And that's fun too, right? It's kind of fanciful and trippy and things. This kind of goes the other way. And one of the interesting points is that it is a little bit Lord of the Rings-ish if Mordor had won. Mm-hmm. So you have, and I guess we will have to really squint at this. It's kind of tiny for us, but if we look at this continent, and you can see that there is this ocean here. So it's like a big cookie monster.
Yeah.
Pac-Man. And this used to be the wonderful land of the elves worshiping God, the great creator of all. Well, they lost. And all of this is full of corrupted elves and dwarves who have corrupted a race of giants and spread across, and evil basically swept the continent. Mm-hmm. And what is left are a few crazy dwarves who live in little citadels in that area, trying to stop them, dwarves who guard a mountain pass here. So these are kind of the dwarves who remain faithful to they were sort of a holy race too, right, with the elves. The Druin are what's left of the high elves. They are terrible. Kobolds are what's left of the dwarfs, also terrible. And these gulls are the corrupted giants at about 4 meters tall. And they have overrun this whole area. There is an enclave of true elves, high elves here. A kind of little, we will get back there one day kind of guys. So what's interesting is that it is not the forces of good, therefore, the very technical good, are here. One tiny group of humans in a little area called Thale here who follow the same ideals, very influenced by the elves. And then this other culture entirely who worships the same god but are not very connected to these wars. They're clearly from somewhere else. So,
Is to get to your question?
Yeah.
So these ones, are they humans or elves?
Yes,
or?
they're Arabs. Very,
Okay,
very,
okay.
very Arabs. And they have +3 education. So you kind of get the idea. They're very, very Levantine Arabs. Clearly there's somewhere over there across the water. Because these mountains are holy to them. There's lots of prophets there. So clearly this is kind of like their little holy land. But they're kind of only interested in that spot for that reason. Clearly there is some larger complex over there.
Yeah.
So surprisingly educated. You suddenly realize these guys throw in little details like that. You were thinking, hey, wait a minute. That wasn't, you read more than the Bulgaria, didn't you? Right? So, but what seems to have stopped, there was a big evil empire here. What seems to have broken it and stopped the spread, besides the mountains, are actually the chaos gods. The chaos gods of the forest, a weird new thing, the living gods here. This culture, the Ilwraith, has actually kind of the dominant human culture now in this area. And the half-elf warlocks, an ethnicity who think they're better than everybody else and have gone crazy seeking deep magic here. Also, they worship Madzurki, the warlock, who's chaotic. And so the chaos gods actually seem to have done a better job of stopping evil than the good ones did. The definitions are important here. It's not like any other things, right? So, there's just the 3.
Is chaos evil?
No. Chaos is actually just kind of self-interested.
Okay.
And so it's a weird definition.
Yeah, well.
Right. They are not interested in creating disorder or anything like that. It's just I'm out for my own thing, or
anarchist more, or
a little bit perhaps, or maybe just selfish if you want to go that way. Yeah. But they're not actively seeking harm. That's what evil is.
Okay.
And good is really snooty good. I mean, really good. Really, oh no, a puppy, really good.
Yeah.
Which is admirable in its way, but as you can see, they have a tendency to it's very easy to be a steward of Thale or a true elf seeking, to gain back the good for the cosmos, and you basically drive yourself crazy and sin too much by accident, and then you're out.
Okay, yeah.
They tend to go a little too far with that stuff.
So Ron, how do you pick up these gems of games?
Not the conversation right now.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're very successful in making me interested in.
The best thing to do is to recognize that the lore of the game is surprisingly good when it looks incredibly stereotypical. And then you read just a little bit more and you realize that absolutely anywhere on this map is layered with backstory, but not too much detail. So you say, oh, well, now I can develop that. And it makes sense to develop. So we are going to go to this area called Croatia, which used to be this whole valley and all these lands down here. Ilwraith has basically broken the power of Croatia and driven them down the valley. So ethnically, this is an ethnic map. Ethnically, Croatians go up to here, but their power of Croatia, the kingdom, is only the base of the valley now. They have to pay this guy here to keep the South Fields stable. So the Angul race, which is a human race which has interbred with the ghouls, and they're just chaotic. They're kind of cool actually. They have dominated this area. So Croatia gets raids from them, gets raids from the Anvil Desert, the bandits. All of these mountains used to be Croatian power. Now they're riddled with bandits. They have lost the coast. All the cities of the coast, except for one, are dens of iniquity and lots of fun. So you're right. So Croatia is reduced to a small, minor mountain kingdom with some agriculture. But they are very associated. They value the ideals of the elves, or at least their gentry does. And this little group I mentioned here, the stewards of Thale, are sympathetic to them and help them out. They have very powerful magic support. That's why they exist at all.
Okay, so they are the goodish, but they are
Yes.
not the good.
Well, a lot of them are.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You'll discover the mechanics about that, which are surprisingly interesting.
Okay.
So that's our situation here. As I say, these mountains are full of interesting bandits and things like that, but it is not, for the most part, the horrific corruption here and then in the remnants of the old empire that was broken along here. Those are not really a problem in this area. So that's a lot of introduction. If we look at these pictures, here are our characters that I have brought. So here we have this woman who, interestingly enough, left or was taken from the court of Croatia as a child because basically she's illegitimate, related to the gentry, but is illegitimate, and her family basically left or she was taken away. So she has grown up or has become one of the sort of lawless folk living up and down the mountains, which doesn't necessarily mean completely vicious or anything, but it's a rough life. She's also a werewolf.
Werewolf.
Yes, which may have had something to do with all of this as well. Werewolfery in this case is very much a physical condition, and makes you difficult to be around even in your human form because you might eat a chicken because you feel like it and things like that. So she does not know that conditions in the court of Croatia have now put her next in line for the throne. The steward of Thale, a guy from Thale, who is kind of attached to this court, is looking for her. Because he's looking for the heir to the Croatian throne. He doesn't like the guy who's officially next in line, and neither does the king. And they think that, and through various magics, they have learned that she is alive.
And being a werewolf is no
They
problem.
don't know that.
They don't know.
It's a bonus.
So that's
Right.
a he?
Yeah,
Okay.
that is a he. And so it looks like a he to me.
Yeah. Beard and
Yes,
things.
a beard.
But and then this fellow is a minor gentry or royalty of Croatia who is with him. So he is technically royalty, but really he's basically like one of these poor knights, right? Doesn't really run anything. This fellow is one of the interesting races as well. The dwarves, many dwarves and elves have just integrated into human cultures, and they have given up on the whole, God and the land thing. And they're kind of weird, but they are not. But for the most part, they have created kind of their own accord with human culture here and there. Both of them can interbreed with humans. Half elves have done so to the extent that they are now effectively an ethnicity. Half dwarfs have not. If you're a half dwarf, that means you have one human parent and one dwarf parent. And basically, you are just like a dwarf, except that you are human height. You're called a great dwarf. And the dwarves seem not to care. You grow up with the dwarves and you're fine. Nobody cares. You're just a big guy.
Not so
Yeah.
mature.
And that's all there is to it.
Oh.
So it's very non-traumatic. They're not
Mhm.
they're not discriminated against or anything.
And if they grow up with humans, or they never do that, or
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but and again, it doesn't seem to bother anybody. So it's sort of interesting that but there's a distinction then between the two kinds of halves. Then the and so that's what this fellow is, and
he's a half dwarf.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And he is actually from the coast and spends a lot of time looking for older ruins and things in these mountains because he is interested in that stuff, as you will see if you get his sheet. So we are going to play in that we are not going to play how they met. We have met.
Yeah, good.
Yes, we're done. And whatever confusions or whatever have occurred. Although I'm going to say that the actual info drop of those two things hasn't quite settled in yet. That hasn't quite been made clear. Yeah, these guys are probably wondering whether this scruffy woman is really whom they should be bringing back, and she's probably. Well, whatever. That's her opinions are her own.
Yeah.
So the point is that they are in these mountains and in a slightly difficult and dangerous situation. That they have come upon a place where distinctive dangers are occurring for them, and we are going to jump right into that and to play that and then deal with whatever interactions and fallout and things like that we want to after. So I will say this. Inside the front cover, it says, somewhere in here, maybe there's the little warning here. Introductory notes. First sentence in the book. Darkurthe Legends is not an easy game to run. This is my first time game mastering this game. I have played it. So, we'll see. First of all, let's choose whom we're playing. Any thoughts on who wants to play whom?
Doesn't matter for me. Är du sugen på något?
Ja, jag är sugen på kvinnan. Men är det...
Varsågod.
Okay.
Okay.
Eller vill du ha det?
Because when I thought that there might possibly be two women, then I was females, then I was conflicted. But she's...
I can play this young knight.
Mm-hmm.
Vill det vara
Elvish looking script here.
en dvärg eller en riddare?
Välj du strålande. Det är alltid bra att göra det första gången här. Så kan jag,
Okej,
har jag...
vilken var det?
Nikald is the steward.
Next,
Okay.
okay, I
Yeah.
take this too.
So, Uzak, the half-dwarf.
Yes.
Nikald, the steward.
Yes.
And then over there we have Hobart.
Yeah.
And then there we have Missand.